Thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, our response will come and it will be severe. That is the promise from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu after a Hezbollah rocket attack killed 12 children on the border between Israel and Lebanon. And an Israeli general tells CBN News why Israel is taking its time as it prepares its plan to strike back. President Biden reveals his plan for changes to the United States Supreme Court, getting support from Democrats and Republicans on Capitol Hill, calling it dead on arrival, while others say it's just a political move in an election year. And Christians in India facing intense persecution, one area being called a graveyard of pastors. But at the same time, some are coming to Christ. All those stories and more ahead right now on CBN NewsWatch.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
A busy Tuesday. Let's begin in Israel, where Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is making it clear the country will strike back against Hezbollah for that deadly attack that killed 12 children Saturday. Even as Israel prepares its response, Netanyahu breaking away from his war cabinet Monday to visit the Druze village hit by that Hezbollah rocket and consoling the families of the young children who were killed. CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell has the story now from Jerusalem.
Like all citizens of Israel and people across the entire world, we were profoundly shocked by this terrible killing.
The Prime Minister also pledged to send a powerful message to Hezbollah.
These children are our children. They are the children of all of us. The state of Israel will not and cannot ignore this. Our response will come and it will be severe.
Retired Major General Yaakov Amidror of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security tells CBN News Israel must take the time it needs to ensure a successful mission.
We are not in a rush, not at all. The more it will be prepared, the better. Here we have to retaliate, and the retaliation should be well prepared before you use it. You have to prepare the retaliation and all the arrangements for the consequences of the retaliation.
In anticipation of a coming attack, the Associated Press reports Hezbollah is preparing its own retaliation that would involve precision-guided, long-range missiles. The report adds that Hezbollah doesn't want a full-blown war. Amidror adds Israel's show of force will indicate what direction it's ready to take.
It very much depends on the decision of the decision-makers. Do they ready to go to a big war? If the answer is yes, it's one set of targets. If the answer is no, it's not the right time for Israel for many reasons, from economy to legitimacy to the ability to fight in two fronts. But if the decision is not to go to a big war, and Israel doesn't want to go to a big war, so it's another set of targets. But it very much depends on the decision or the readiness or the willingness to go to a big war.
Amidror lists key points Israel needs to consider before it chooses a full-scale war, including quality and quantity of ammunition, whether the economy can endure 6 to 9 months of war, domestic and international legitimacy, especially from the U.S., the IDF's level of readiness, as well as the home front.
These are the 6 elements that should be considered before someone is saying, yes, I'm ready to go to war.
Chris is here now to continue our coverage. So how prepared is Israel's home front command?
Well, the question of how well they're prepared remains to be seen, Ephraim, but they are preparing. They're stockpiling essential supplies that would include medicine, food, hospitals, especially up in the north, and medical teams are on standby. They also have underground facilities, Ephraim, and they have been built ever since 2006 during the Second Lebanon War. Some of the hospitals, for example, in Haifa. They've also conducted emergency simulations. The question is, will it be enough in a full-scale war with Hezbollah? They also are encouraging individuals to prepare for power outages. There was one report that could be 3 days or 7 days, and they want people to stockpile food and water, much like preparing for a hurricane, but this could last a lot longer.
Netanyahu promises a severe response to the Hezbollah attack that killed those children, but Israel is also facing international pressure to de-escalate and to avoid an all-out war. How is the government balancing those two concerns?
Well, it is a balancing act. It's something they've been doing ever since October 7th. The main consideration likely is the United States and how much pressure is the Biden administration putting on Israel behind the scenes. For example, Yoav Gallant, Israel's defense minister, Lloyd Austin, the defense secretary, they discussed Israel's response just a day or so ago. The U.S. is still advocating for diplomacy. One other nation that's involved is France, because they have a long history with Lebanon. And so they're trying to de-escalate the situation too. But Israel feels right now it needs to respond forcefully because of this attack, and also because of the thousands of missiles, rockets, and drones since October 8th that Hezbollah has been firing. So this is that balancing act that Israel has to manage right now, especially in these next few days and weeks.
Chris, you interviewed a former Israeli general who said Israel is not in a rush to respond. Is there any idea on how long Israel will take to do so?
Well, it's really up to the decision makers, as he said. He did mention a week or so, but it really is up to Yoav Gallant and the prime minister. He's the defense minister, but also Prime Minister Netanyahu. That was the mandate that the war cabinet gave them, that they would decide how exactly Israel's going to respond. One factor they have to weigh is waiting for foreign nationals to leave Lebanon. The other consideration, what are the targets? As Yaakov Amidror said in our story, that will determine which way this war goes. Will it de-escalate because of the certain targets they pick, or if they choose other particular targets that would actually go to a bigger war? And so they want to prepare the targets and calculate the response according to what they want. Do they want a full-scale war, or do they want to just make a statement and respond to what happened last Saturday when these 12 young Druze children were killed?
In light of all that's going on, is the IDF prepared for an all-out war with Hezbollah?
Well, I believe they are, and if they had to, and it reminded me of what Jesus said in Luke chapter 14, and he said, he talked about counting the cost, and he said, suppose a king is about to go to war against another king, won't he sit down and consider whether he's able, with 10,000 men, to oppose the one coming against him with 20,000? And if he's not able, he may send a delegation while the other is still a long way off and ask for terms of peace. So that's pretty much exactly what Israel is doing right now, counting the cost. That's what the war cabinet is doing, what Yoav Gallant is doing, and Benjamin Netanyahu. And they have to count the costs in all these particular areas. On the one hand, the IDF has been preparing. They've been conducting training exercises, simulating the challenging terrain that South Lebanon presents that's much different than the Gaza Strip. It's mountainous. Hezbollah has a tunnel complex there, very elaborate, and they have thousands of well-trained and experienced fighters. In the meantime, the IDF has been hitting the infrastructure, but it remains to be seen exactly how, whether or not they're going to go to a major war anytime soon.
The country has a weapons defense system on the way known as the Iron Beam. What can you tell us about this?
Well, it's laser-based, and it's pinpoint accuracy. They can destroy projectiles in mid-flight. Now, the advantages, Ephraim, is that it would cost just a few dollars in electricity for striking down, a drone or a missile or a rocket. That would be compared to tens of thousands of dollars for the Iron Dome or other interceptors like the David Sling or even the Arrow. So it has unlimited ammunition, and it would complement the Iron Dome. And certain like Star Wars. But it remains to be seen exactly when it's going to be deployed. Some people I've heard say September, other people say next year, but we'll see. But it could be a game changer there on the battlefront.
We've covered a lot, but only scratched the surface. Give us a preview of what's ahead on Jerusalem Dateline today.
Well, we have a report from Julie Stahl. Right now, she's in Magdal Shams, right there where those 12 Druze children were killed. We're going to have analysis by Surit Zahavi. She's with the Alma Research Center and an expert on Hezbollah. Also, insight from a major in the reserves who's actually on the border right now. His name is Amiad Cohen. And we finally have a story from CBN Israel about helping a widow in distress. That's all going to be on today's Jerusalem Dateline.
Looking forward to that one. Thank you so much, Chris, as always, for your insight. Stay safe. Know that we back here are praying for you and our team there on the ground in Israel. And you at home can see the latest from Jerusalem Dateline. You'll find it this evening on the CBN News channel. It begins at 8 Eastern. You can also find it on the CBN News app, or you can simply watch it on YouTube. Coming up, here at home, President Biden's plan to make changes to the United States Supreme Court, supported by Democrats in Washington, but facing harsh criticism from Republicans, who call it dead on arrival on Capitol Hill. We're going to have the story for you when we come back. President Joe Biden plans to change the Supreme Court quickly ran into opposition after he announced it Monday. Although he calls the ideas necessary, some legal scholars label it unconstitutional. And others, critics, are saying it is more about appealing for Democratic votes going into the November election. Wendy Griffith has this story.
President Biden defended his proposal to overhaul the Supreme Court at the LBJ Presidential Library in Austin, Texas, Monday. The president called for term limits of 18 years for the justices and a binding code of conduct.
Supreme Court's current ethics code is weak and, even more frightening, voluntary.
He also pitched a constitutional amendment to limit presidential immunity established by the High Court earlier this month.
I'm certain we need these reforms.
Congressional Republican leaders slammed his proposal, Senator Lindsey Graham calling it dead on arrival.
The Roberts Court has brought constitutional balance back to the court, and the liberals in this country want to pack the court. They want to destroy the court. So their initiatives coming from Biden will be dead on arrival in the Senate. They have no desire to make the court better. They're just trying to make it more liberal.
Legal scholars say this is about the political left's discontent with recent Supreme Court decisions, including the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
Trying to just change the court to get people who will vote the way you want them to is a really bad answer, because all you're doing is opening yourself up to the other side doing the same thing in 4 years.
Democratic House Majority Leader Chuck Schumer applauded the president's plan.
I believe the president is right to say aloud what many Americans already think. The Supreme Court is a morass.
It comes as the new race for the White House is heating up after Biden dropped out. With the proposal unlikely to pass, some believe it's really about stirring up the Democrat vote.
That the Supreme Court would be used by the left as a political tool or a political weapon, I think is just simply shameful. Our Republican democracy here requires judicial independence.
The latest national polls show the presidential race tightening, though Trump still has a lead over Kamala Harris. At a private fundraiser, Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance reportedly admitted that Harris is a stronger candidate than Biden because she is younger and doesn't have the same baggage and struggles as the president. Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
Still ahead, it contains an area called the Graveyard of Pastors as Christians are beaten and imprisoned for sharing their faith. CBN News takes us to India to expose those trying to purge non-Hindus from their land. We're going to have that story for you. It's coming up next right here on CBN NewsWatch. A surge in violence against Christians has flared up in India, where millions believe the country belongs to Hindus. Many think all other religions must be eliminated from society. Human rights groups accuse India's prime minister of supporting this extremist view, and several states have enacted laws to punish non-Hindus. CBN's George Thomas brings us that story from India.
Yes, I'm here. At 16 years old, Paul was instructed to target Christians by the Rashtriya Swayam Savak Sangh, or RSS, a radical Hindu paramilitary organization.
Since I was a Hindu and part of the RSS, I became a staunch follower of their Hindu principles, and because of that, killing Christians and pastors became my goal.
We've concealed Paul's identity for safety. He says the RSS singles out Christians because so many Hindus in India are abandoning their faith to follow Jesus Christ. One of the group's early founders referred to Christians as anti-national, and hostile, and should be treated as such. RSS members seen here often combine religious Hindu education with self-defense classes and exercises.
They told us Christianity doesn't belong to a country because they are converting people. Therefore, we have to attack pastors and demolish their churches so that our country will remain a Hindu country.
Hindus make up just under 80% of India's population. Muslims are at 14%. Christianity is India's third largest religion, with about 26 million followers, or about 2.3% of the population, and their numbers are steadily growing. Determined to stop the growth, Paul thought he had his chance when a pastor visited his hostel. Instead, the encounter changed his life when the pastor shared the gospel with him.
My heart was breaking when I heard that Jesus Christ's blood was sacrificed for me, that Jesus Christ loved me, and he gave his blood for my sins. I dedicated myself to Christ right there and then.
Paul now serves as a traveling pastor in remote areas of India's Karnataka state, often referred to as a graveyard of pastors because of the intense persecution Christians face here. His church is repeatedly attacked by RSS gangs. He's been put in prison for preaching, yet it hasn't stopped his ministry.
Even in jail, I felt God's love. Even though I received the beatings, I was rejoicing, and because of that, I am grateful to God.
India, with its 1.4 billion people, is the world's largest democracy. However, human rights and religious freedom advocates say democracy has been in retreat ever since the Hindu-led BJP government and its leader, Narendra Modi, took power in 2014.
It's really the most sophisticated government as far as restricting religious freedoms outside of China.
Dr. David Curry is a commission member of the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom. USCIRF has documented an unprecedented uptick in violence against Christians under Modi's rule. The majority of attacks carried out by RSS and other Hindu extremist groups with ties to the Prime Minister's political party. Modi is accused of fanning the flames of Hindutva, a radical ideology that teaches only Hindus are true Indians and that all other religions, especially Christians and Muslims, are foreigners who must be removed from society.
They have a goal to push Christianity out of India. They see India as the holy land of Hinduism, and they intend to force that to happen.
That includes passing laws that criminalize religious conversions, particularly targeting Christian and Muslim minorities. Last September, Karnataka became the 10th Indian state to pass these so-called anti-conversion laws, and with it carrying a 3 to 5 year prison term for anyone found guilty of illegally converting people to Christianity.
Ever since this anti-conversion law was passed, the authorities claim that we are forcibly converting people.
Joseph pastors in different cities and villages in Karnataka. We've taken similar precautions to protect his safety. He says RSS and other right-wing Hindu groups accuse him of converting Hindus by offering them money or other forms of bribes. He denies those charges.
When we started the ministry 35 years ago, we didn't have so many problems. Those days, we had religious freedom, but now we can't even talk, can't even give out a pamphlet, can't do anything. That's the situation that we find ourselves in today. Everyone has to run their churches with fear.
Like Pastor Paul, Joseph too has endured the wrath of Hindu radicals.
They've damaged my bicycles, set Bibles on fire, and burnt it. Come into our church during service and beat people up. The police have come to my house several times. I've been taken to the police station and repeatedly accused of forcing people to convert. They never have any evidence.
12 of India's 28 states, most of them ruled by Modi's BJP party, now have laws regulating religious conversions. These states have also witnessed a surge in mob violence against Indian Christians.
It is amazing how Christians are standing firm in their faith.
Don Schenk heads up an organization that's been sharing the gospel primarily through Christian radio broadcasts in India since 1978. His group has documented cases where Hindu extremists have discriminated against new Christian converts. Authorities, especially at the village level, do little to nothing to protect the vulnerable believers.
It is amazing the number of people who are being banned from going to the village well, not allowed to purchase foods at the market, being chased out, from being ostracized from family and community, to actually being beaten, being killed, having their property destroyed.
Although the Constitution gives Christians the right to preach, Shank says the church in India must still be careful.
Pray for the believers to stand firm in their faith, and pray for those who are doing the persecution, that their hearts will be changed, because we have seen that happen. A village priest threatened to smash a radio that somebody was using for outreach, but as he made those threats, he also came close and listened to the radio, and he himself embraced Jesus Christ as his Savior.
George Thomas, CBN News, Karnataka, India.
The Bible does remind us to pray for those facing persecution. Stay with us. We'll be right back with an encouraging word for your Wednesday. Welcome back. Time now for your Tuesday Tweetable. It's a message for you to post, tag, tweet, and share with those in your circles of influence and be blessed by it yourself. At the end of your rope is the start of God's hand. Trust Him to pull you through. He will never leave you. He will pull you through. That will do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. I want to remind you can always find more of our news programs on the CBN News channel. You can find them there at any time as well as online. The address is cbnnews.com. Let us know what you think about the stories you've seen here today or any day. You can do that by emailing us at the address right there at the bottom of your screen. That's newswatch@cbn.com. Look forward to seeing you right back here same time tomorrow.